On October 25th, 1975, Evel Knievel shocked the world at Kings Island. I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics. Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans. That's who we are, and that's who we care about. Don, Evel Knievel, October 25th, 1975, live on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Tell me all about it.
Well, hard to believe it was 48 years ago, but I was watching with my family on TV. I think this jump, really put Kings Island on the map because you had a very big audience, one of the largest ever, I think, for ABC Wild World of Sports was watching this. It was a cold, drizzly kind of day at Kings Island. They had sold tickets for both, whether you want to get the combo, the park, and the jump, or just watch the jump. I think there was like 5,000 purchased the jump only that day. It was late in the afternoon when they were doing this. It was broadcast live, so there was a lot of apprehension, on the park side is what if something happens and he crashes? The network, same thing. What happens if he, crashes? Uh, but he did make the jump. It was over 14 Greyhound buses, and just a major spectacle. I think when you look at all the major events Kings Island has had over the years, and they've had a lot of them, the Evel Knievel jump is the one that stands out to me as number one on that list.
You know what's funny is I remember always growing up and knowing that the Brady Bunch had filmed at Kings Island and knowing that the Partridge Family had filmed at Kings Island and having seen both of those episodes. But since you don't really get reruns of ABC's Wide World of Sports, I always knew that Evel Knievel did a jump, but it was more like legendary than it was like knowledge. But the rumor always going around was that he jumped the fountain at Kings Island. That's not true. He jumped Greyhound buses. He jumped the fountain at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. Um,
Right. Yeah. It was set up in the parking lot at Kings Island. And, years later in 2008, his son, Robbie Knievel, wanted to do a jump at Kings Island, and he was adamant it had to be in the parking lot, just like his dad. But, 14 Greyhound buses, when you look back at the Harley Davidson motorcycles from that era, how heavy they were.
mhm.
And, to get over, it doesn't sound like a lot now when you've had, these daredevils that have gone over 20, 25, 30, different kind of buses or vehicles. And Robbie's was, 24 Coke Zero trucks. So it doesn't sound like it's that big of a jump, but that was a long way with the weight of that motorcycle, and he hit it going the ramp going 95 miles per hour, and he kind of broke the back of his motorcycle when he landed because he hit hard on the other side. But it was a successful jump. It was probably the most successful jump of his career. He crashed in other places like Caesar's Palace, and that it was the last big jump of his legendary career. And I got to hear a lot about it when Ruth Voss was the public relations manager at Kings Island at the time, and she had just started when this was all finalized for him to come make a jump. And then she had to spend, time with him, taking him around on media tours. And she told me she wondered what in the world did I get into, if this is what this job is going to be about, because he was a difficult guy, a complicated guy, a lot of demands. And she said she was just worn out, just promoting that jump and going with him from, whether it was West Virginia and Indianapolis, Louisville, Lexington, Columbus, all the different places that they went on these tours. And she just said it was just unbelievable how hard he was to work with. But when it was all over, and 52% of the country's watching, everybody knows where Kings Island is now. I think that she thought that was one of the most rewarding things of her career as well too.
I feel like in the future, when we release our best of album for this podcast, we're going to use that clip of you saying like, "Yeah, Ruth said I didn't know what I got into because he had all these demands and he was a complicated characters." And then we'll have the SpongeBob thing that says "a few decades later," and then you can tell about your experience with Robbie Knievel and how complicated of a character he was too. But that is for a
Yeah, and
different show,
and I
though.
got to hear from Robbie about about her, because Robbie was there. He was just a kid, but Robbie was riding his motorcycle, hot dogging around, doing wheelies and things, entertaining the crowd before Evil made his jump. And Robbie told me all about that day, and he remembered a lot about it. But I do remember watching on TV, cold, drizzly, rainy, um, and then you look in the background, and I was more interested, because I could see, the Eiffel Tower, and you could see the Sky Ride, and you could see, at that time it was called the Scooby Doo roller coaster right in the background. So I was looking at all those kind of things, and then here comes the jump.
Yeah, and, so I if I recall, at the time, they thought he had broken the record, but he did not. Or am I thinking of Knievel Jr., of Captain Robbie Knievel?
Captain Robbie Knievel at the time, Evil's was the longest motorcycle jump, and there were two different kind of jump. I mean, both were using different kind of bikes. Evil had the old Harley Davidsons, and Robbie, had the lightweight bike, which could travel a lot further and go a little bit faster. And Robbie even acknowledged, that he had a lot of advantages that his dad did not. But when you talk to people who saw them both at the, height of their careers, there wasn't anybody that said Evil was the better stunt driver in terms of, being able to ride a bike. That Robbie was far more talented in terms of being the daredevil, where Evil had the advantage is he was quite the showman. He
Yes.
knew how to market, he knew how to promote, he knew how to make himself this big major brand. He had the toy line and all those other things. So when it came to marketing and promotion, and putting on a show and knowing how to do all that stuff, he's Barnum and Bailey, is what he was like. Evil had the edge, but in terms of being able to really ride a bike, and who was the better rider, better daredevil, it was Robbie.
Yeah, I was funny because I was watching the, tribute to Evel Knievel, like, that the Jackass guys made, and this is right after he passed before Robbie Knievel's jump, so it would have been 2006, 2007, sometime around then. But, they talked about how when his toy came out, the motorcycle that would jump, which looks like an awesome toy, I would totally buy one if I could find one, but, um
I had
did
one.
you? I feel like everybody did at the
I
time.
did.
You know? But when that toy came out, there was some sort of intricacy to it, but because they clearly had toys for, the Lone Ranger and stuff like that, but that was like one of the very first toys that was made for somebody that was just a person. It was Evel Knievel, and it's not, somebody playing the character of. I mean, I guess he is playing the character of Evel Knievel in all reality, but it was a human being, and it's them doing their job, and it's a toy of it. That was the first time that they had something like that. So that was kind of impressive, but he
I wish I still had that. Can you imagine how much that would go for if I still had that in mint condition?
I think it was on an episode of Pawn Stars. I don't remember how much it went for, but it was several $100s, I'm sure. Cost like 750 when you bought it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I always thought that it's interesting because I did a lot of research on Evil Knievel before the Robbie Knievel thing happened. Mainly because I took it very seriously anytime that you pulled me into any kind of project, so I would know what I was talking about. And, y eh when we talk about Evel Knievel, he grew up in Butte, Montana. He was very poor. He made a ton of money doing this stuff. The way that he made money is, yes, you're correct with the showmanship, but when it comes down to it, he wasn't afraid to crash. I guess there's a life lesson with that, but I don't think that that would be the best role model, but, uh, he loved to spend his money and show off his money, and he didn't try to be subtle. He said, I came from a poor background, and, if I can afford a gold cane to walk around with, that's what I'm gonna do." And Robbie was not like that. Robbie was more like because Evil was tough as a father. I remember him telling us about that. We're not gonna get too much into that, but Robbie was more like he grew up doing this, and it was the only life he ever knew. So he grew up wealthy. I mean, by the time that he was born, Evil was making millions. But being a motorhead and stuff, and how many motorcycles did he bring to Kings Island when he jumped? I know,
Wait, that whole
yeah,
trailer.
yeah, he had at least like five that he could have used for the because I remember I asked him what bike he was going to use for the jump, and he hadn't decided yet, and he said one of these like three or something, and they were all like the little like sport bike thing that they go fast and they're like, but he had a couple Harleys with him too, for his running around phase. Um, but Evil, yeah, jumped Harleys. He jumped bikes that weigh a ton. The bikes that he jumped, you or I could lift, I bet. You know?
Yeah. Did you ever hear how Evil got his name?
That was
They
in the
took on that name
documentary,
Evel
but I don't
Knievel.
remember what it is. Why don't you tell the story?
Well, from what I was told, and Robbie backed this up, is that Evel went to jail, and he was Robert Knievel, and they were doing the roll call, and they said, Robert Knievel, and he has to, acknowledge he's in the cell. And then they had the next guy was named something like Mark Knaufel or something. They go Knaufel, and then the two police guys or whatever looked at each other and were like, we got Evil Knievel and Awful Knaufel. This is great. so, so he kind of took on the name Evil from that, and Robbie kind of vouched that that story, had validity to it. It wasn't exactly word for word like that or anything, but he said, yeah, there's some validity to it. It was while he was in jail, and and they were just calling out the names, and a cellmate was named Knaufel, and that's how he got that name. But the stories Ruth would tell, I really enjoyed hearing those stories, and she just called him like the meanest person she'd ever met and everything. Uh, but that's probably why he was successful. You almost have to be like that to do what he did.
Yeah, you have to be relentless in a lot of cases. But, as vicious as he is to other people, I mean, how he treated himself. I mean, I'm gonna make this jump and I might break 16 bones. Like, I wouldn't do that to myself. He would. He did, you know?
No, no, he would get like all worked up, and Robbie would too. When the crowd would be out there, they'd peek outside of their trailer and they'd say, every one of those people came here to see me crash. They wanted to see me die today, and they would work themselves up that way. And it was almost like they were competing against the crowd because they wanted to make it, just like silence the crowd a little bit. But very competitive, both of them.
Mm.
And when I always think back on the early years of Kings Island, the Evil Knievel jump is one of the first things that comes to mind. And one of my earliest memories of Kings Island, I went there in 72, 73, 74, even before um, you know Evil made that jump. But that was one of those just memorable moments. Even though I wasn't there in person, I did at least watch it on TV, and it just kind of further ingrained Kings Island into my childhood.
Yeah, and you can thank Evil Knievel for that. Awesome. So, what a day to be had. That's up there with, the Brady Bunch. I wouldn't necessarily say that it kinda sits on the same shelf as, like, The Beast as far as, like, days in Kings Island history, but it's definitely up there, and made the world know about it 'cause it was live on ABC's Wide World of Sports. Very cool. Awesome. Well, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.